we used to visit my grandpa down in Corpus Christi every summer. And I remember one time, it was like the day we were leaving, we were getting ready to leave. And I was sitting in my grandpa's living room watching TV. And I was watching Jenny Jones, as I always did every day. I was a big fan of the way into the Jenny Jones show. When I was a small child, I would get home from school, flip on the Jenny Jones show, see what former nerds had become hot. And were there to, lord that over their former bullies. And even as a kid, I was like, guys, this is a really misguided, I don't think you're going to get the closure you're looking for here, Jenny Jones guests. I'm like 10. I'm like, guys, what are you thinking here? But anyway, so I'm sitting in my grandpa's living room watching the Jenny Jones show, and I don't remember the subject, but two women were on stage and they were lobbing the word hoe back and forth at each other. They're like, you're a hoe. No, you're a hoe. No, you're a hoe. This was the tone of the argument. And my grandpa was just walking through his living room. He was walking through and he kind of paused and he looked at the screen and he was like, they mean like whores? They're calling each other whores? And I was like, that's right, Papa. I just think it's so beautiful when, you can reach across the generation gap from time to time, It's lovely. In that same vein, one time I was in a grocery store and there was a really elderly woman and she was asking the very young employee, she was probably 16 or something, the oldest lady you can imagine, the youngest Kroger associate you can imagine, and the woman is asking where the delicatessen is. And I know, this could all be solved if I just poked my head in here and said, the deli. It could have been solved, but I overheard this and just said nothing. And they were just at this impasse. They're both looking at each other like, I don't know where to proceed from here. And I just walked by. Not, I think about that from time to I've really, I could have really helped out in that particular scenario. I heard what was going on and I chose not to help. And I just have to live with that. But anyway, boom, 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 how. Welcome to the Oddball History Podcast, episode 102. So You've Been Marooned, an episode about marooning.
Got digging through the past. Crazy tales, they uncover fast. History stranger than you think. They'll also talk about wieners in a blink. They'll talk about wieners in a blink. Oddball History.
I was thinking, what better topic for the summer months than marooning? A perfect summer topic, that was the original endless summer, marooning. We're going to be getting into the practice itself, its history, as well as some of the more famous cases of marooning, including Alexander Selkirk, the Scottish pirate, whose mouth wrote a check his ass couldn't cash. At least that's how it looked. But then later on, it turned out his ass could cash that check. He could cash it real good. He cashes it and he becomes a goddamn legend in the process. A true life Robinson Crusoe, they think. We'll get into that a little later. But first, it's time for the glorious return of Top Comments of the Week. Top Comments of the Week. Top Comments of the Week is presented this week by Urkelbet, the only online bookmaker endorsed by TV's Steve Urkel himself, Jaleel White. Use code DIDIDO, all one word, for a free $10 credit toward your first wager on the upcoming Little League World Series. Our first top comment comes from the last episode on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube over there. Our old pal WRZ2E said, "Great episode. I will raise a glass to Mr. Malloy." Whiskey glass emoji. Absolutely. Slancha. Cheers. Prost. All of those things. So, I mean, I don't drink anymore, but if you do, frankly, you gotta raise a toast to old Iron Mike Malloy. I mean, he was one of the greats. Definitely immediately one of my favorite guys we've ever covered on the podcast. Thanks for the comment, WRZ2E. Then over on Instagram, our old pal Lindsay Velvet Spectre, shout out Lindsay. She said on the clip about the true story of Rasputin. You remember that about how it got all neutered with facts and science, the Rasputin story, and now it's just the story of a guy getting shot in the head and anticlimactically, but Lindsay said over there on Instagram, my first deep dive into his lore was being obsessed with the Don Bluth Romanov propaganda musical Anastasia when I was 8. Definitely prefer the song and dance man Rasputin to the real story. And 100%, yeah, for sure. This is definitely as another thing about the real Rasputin. He is never he had such little razzmatazz in comparison. I think to the Disney version. Thank you for the comment, Lindsay. Then from that same clip over on Instagram about the truth about Rasputin, Nigerian Night Train commented, that doesn't technically discount the poison. It just means he never ate it. They messed it up. It doesn't mean they didn't shoot him once and then he got up and ran away. There's a way to tell the story that still preserves the fantastical narrative. And hell yeah. I'm with you 100%, Nigerian Night Train. The fantastical story is so much better than than the things that are shown by the science. It's just better. We should all forget that we learned that last week. I think that's where I'm at with this. We all just take a pact right now as a community, as an Oddball History podcast community, to just forget that we ever found out the truth about Rasputin. He's still he's back. It's the old zombie Rasputin story again. We're going back to the before times when the Rasputin story was still cool and it seemed like he might be a zombie of some kind. It was more fun. It was better than the him just getting shot in the head story. But many thanks to the Nigerian Night Train for the comment. We appreciate it. And with that, it's on to our topic of the week, marooning. Marooning, everybody's talking about it. For the uninitiated, marooning is defined as the intentional act of abandoning someone in an uninhabited area, such as a desert island. Mostly it's like a 17th and 18th century thing. It's mostly pirates, honestly, but sometimes like legit navies would do marooning too. The word actually derives from the term maroon, a term for a fugitive slave, because history can never not be horrible for too long. And it's used for crewmen, marooning, and in the case of mutinies, captains. They would leave you on a deserted island with some food and water, maybe a Bible, and a pistol in case you wanted to shoot yourself at any point. They'd say, take the pistol. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's what I always say when it comes to taking the pistol in instances of marooning. But of course, that concern only comes into play if you were lucky enough to be on an actual island, what we would consider an island. Sometimes it wasn't so much. Sometimes it was more of like a sandbar that would disappear when the tide came in. Unfortunate. So mostly marooning was a death sentence, but not always, as we'll see. Sometimes you'd get marooned and then like 15 minutes later a ship would come by and you'd be fine. That's happened before. It wasn't common, but it happened. You could also potentially survive if the island you were marooned on had sufficient food on it, but then again, you're still just waiting for a boat. But marooning was an official punishment outlined in the pirate articles, or articles of fairness, which were like little pirate constitutions they had. In Black Bart Roberts and John Phillips listed in their pirate articles, they outlined marooning as a punishment. Only they made a little joke out of it. Their term for marooning a guy was to be made governor of an island, which is pretty funny. This is some good pirate humor for y'all. And it was a punishment for, among other things, cheating their fellow pirates. If you were because if you can't trust your fellow pirates, I mean, who can you trust? It's funny, too, there's that saying, no honor among thieves, but you read about pirates, and there was like so much honor among those thieves. They're like, they had laws and shit. They were always voting on things. Tons of honor coming out of their asses, honestly, a lot of these pirates. But that's neither here nor there. Marooning got so big at a point in the late 18th century that in the U.S., in the southern U.S., people started doing like little parody maroonings. They would go on long, extended, probably super drunken camping trips, and they'd call it marooning. They'd say they were going marooning. So also a little another little fun side to marooning. The real thing was not fun, of course. Usually it meant certain death, as in the case of Juan de Cartagena, who was marooned on a remote island in Patagonia by Magellan. This was this week 506 years ago, August 11th, 1520. Cartagena is marooned, and to be fair, Magellan probably would have preferred executing, just having his head cut off right away. But Cartagena he has a powerful family. He's the nephew and possibly illegitimate son of this uber powerful Archbishop Juan Rodriguez de Fonseca, who is a favorite and personal royal chaplain to Queen Isabella, and also the head of the Casa de Contratacion, which regulated trade in Spain's American colonies. Cartagena uses his powerful dad or uncle or whatever to get appointed to serve as Inspector General of Magellan's Armada de Molucca, authorized to supervise all the expedition's financial operations. So then Magellan, in deference to Fonseca, appoints Cartagena as the captain of the largest ship in the fleet, the San Antonio. And Cartagena, despite having a total of no experience at sea, he is actually making more on this journey than Magellan himself. And he's apparently being a gigantic asshole from day one, as rich kids have been known to do from time to time. He routinely opposed Magellan's navigation decisions and refused to salute Magellan when custom dictated he should. Then when a storm held the fleet up around Tenerife and food had to be rationed, Cartagena starts bad-mouthing Magellan to the boys. He's like, guys, if I was in charge, we would never be rationing food. All right, I'll tell you that right now. Just wouldn't happen. This guy Magellan sucks. So Magellan has the guy demoted, arrested, and confined in one of the ships for the remainder of the trip to South America. But then when they reach Patagonia, Cartagena escapes. He sneaks off the Victoria, where he's been confined, onto the San Antonio, where he rallies a bunch of guys, a bunch of fellow Spaniards. He's appealing to their sense of xenophobia, their dislike of the Portuguese. Magellan is Portuguese, and he's like, guys, it's time for us Spaniards to take over from this filthy Portuguese. I don't know what they would call him, but I'm sure they had a name. I'm sure they had a slur, I'm sure they had a slur, and I'm sure they were throwing it around a lot leading up to this attempted mutiny. They take over the San Antonio. The original ship Cartagena had been captain of, remember. They declare Magellan no longer in charge, after which two other ships, the Victoria and the Concepcion, joined in the mutiny. On April 2nd, 1520, Cartagena sends a letter to Magellan demanding that he sign a letter saying that he was no longer in control of the fleet. This guy, Cartagena, he was, if ever a man was asking for a marooning, it was Cartagena. He was cruising for a marooning. So Magellan, he doesn't like people playing on his phone. He keeps it real. He is on a ship called the Trinidad, has brought it alongside the Victoria to give his answer to Cartagena. He makes a big show of sending a guy in a boat across with what is supposed to be a little, document with his response on it. when the captain of the Victoria reaches out to grab the document supposedly containing Magellan's response, the messenger grabs the guy and stabs him to death. That's his response. At the same time, 15 other guys from Magellan's ship board Victoria and start butchering mutineers, at which point the crew of the Victoria decide they don't want to be mutineers no more. They switch sides, make a big show of being on the right side of the fight, probably kick the mutineers long after they're dead to show that they're on the same team as the guys doing the butchering. They're like, Magellan, I was always against this mutiny. I told those guys, I said, you guys, you better not. But who listens to me? Nobody. I'll tell you that right now, Magellan. You know how it is. And then that guy gets executed. So the Victoria is seized. Then Magellan that leaves 2 mutinous ships. So then Magellan is anchored across from the San Antonio, and these strong winds pull the San Antonio kind of right in the sights of Magellan's ship. Magellan fires a broadside on the San Antonio, and they surrender immediately. That's enough for them. They've seen enough. Mutiny over, and then Cartagena, once the San Antonio's out, he's like, yeah, all right, I give up. He gives up the Concepcion without incident. Magellan then holds a trial for the mutineers. Cartagena is kind of spared, kind of spared. He was still marooned and died, But he would have been just executed. But as we kind of mentioned before, he had that wealthy uncle or possibly dad. And so Magellan did not want to just straight up execute him. Instead, he's marooned with a priest who was also in on the mutiny named Pedro Sanchez de la Reina. Neither is ever heard from again, which is, the usual course of things with marooning. But not always, as we'll see. In 1542, our next case of marooning, Marguerite de la Roque, a French noblewoman and relative of the nobleman privateer Jean-Francois de la Roque de Roberval. Marguerite, they're on an expedition, her and her uncle, or whatever Roberval was to her. I don't think it's clear in anything, but they were family somehow. In 1542, he's named Lieutenant General of New France in current-day Canada. So they're on their way to the New World when she, Marguerite, became lovers with a young man on the ship. Roberval finds out about the affair and maroons Marguerite, the guy, and the Marguerite's handmaiden, a woman named Damienne. And there's a chance, the official reason for the marooning, of course, is Roberval is a strict Calvinist. And so his religious sensibilities were offended by the affair. But then people also point out he was also drowning in debt, and he stood to financially benefit from Marguerite's death. So that's pretty convenient. In any case, Roberval finds out. He says, Marguerite, your ass is marooned. Fella, your ass is marooned. Handmaiden, Damien, marooned. You're all marooned. In one version of the story, the guy actually wasn't marooned, and then he swam. They were taking off, and he jumped in the water and swam after his beloved Marguerite. So the 3 of them are marooned on an island near present-day Canada. They don't think Marguerite was pregnant at the time of her marooning, but she did get pregnant. She had a baby, and the baby it died. I'm sorry. I wish I would have thought of a way to soften that for y'all, but there's no 2 ways around it. Everyone died but Marguerite, as a matter of fact. Pretty soon Marguerite is all alone, but Marguerite, she's a survivor. She's not going to give up. She's not going to stop. She's going to work harder, if anything. So fancy French lady that she is, she soon learns to hunt wild animals and survives several years on the island doing so. until one day some Basque fishermen happen by and Marguerite is rescued. She makes it all the way back to France, where she's something of a celebrity for a while. She settles into a relatively normal life as a schoolmistress in Nontron, and then she remembers she has a score to settle with this guy, Roberval. She calls in a favor from an old friend from her pre-marooning years, a shadowy assassin known only as the Swede, who tracks down Roberval, busts in on him while he's sitting on the can. Actually, he's on the shitter, and then he goes, Marguerite sends her regards, and then he shoots him, disappears into the night like he was never even there. And that's not true, of course. There's no evidence that Marguerite ever took any action against Roberval, but that's really disappointing. So I decided to, punch it up a little bit. Although I guess also that wouldn't be Marguerite, That's not Marguerite. Marguerite's more of a live and let live kind of gal. You're going to get marooned sometimes. That's just the truth of it. You're going to get marooned. You can't go getting all upset about that kind of thing, People are going to maroon you from time to time. Oh, and then this was a good one. In 1566, the decorated Portuguese maritime pilot Lope Martin was marooned on an island in the Ugelang Atoll in the Marshall Islands, which is honestly kind of a win for him because the ship he was on was bound for the Philippines, where they were going to execute his ass for desertion and embezzlement after he separated from the rest of the fleet. After like 10 days, he was with this fleet, and then he decided, this sucks, I'm going to go this way. And then they wanted to kill him for desertion. So they get him on this ship. He is headed toward his own death. Not a fun boat trip. He's headed toward the Philippines, where this guy is the leader, I guess, of that expedition, is going to execute him. And then he leads a mutiny, and then a second mutiny, which lands him suddenly in command of the ship that was supposed to be. So he decides, I think I'd rather actually not go to the Philippines where they're waiting to execute me. He heads to the Ugelang Atoll. He anchors there and orders everybody off the ship so they can make repairs. That's what he says. Really, he wants them off the ship so he can maroon their asses. That's his idea. He's going to shore up his support, then maroon everybody who's not with him. His life is saved. But then the crew hits him with the Uno reverse card. They all get together, get back on the ship, and maroon his ass back. So he gets marooned with 26 of his supporters, and they are never heard from again. But what an effort! Right, by Lope Martin. That's incredible. 2 mutinies? Not one, but 2 mutinies to take control of the ship. That's incredible. That's an incredible maneuvering from the maritime pilot Lope Martin. Anyway, in 1806, the most recent famous marooning in history, an English sailor who had been pressed into service on a ship called the HMS Recruit during the Napoleonic Wars, named Robert Jeffrey, was marooned on the island of Sombrero, a.k.a. Hat Island, in the Lesser Antilles, for stealing the midshipmen's beer on their voyage to the Caribbean. This guy apparently stole the midshipmen's beer, and the ship's captain, Warwick Lake, is so mad that he maroons Jeffrey. It's a few months later when Lake's commanding officer, Sir Alexander Cochrane, hears the story, and he's like, oh my God, you can't fucking do that. You can't. What do you think? This is like 50 years ago? You can't just go marooning guys for crazy reasons like this. He orders Lake to go retrieve Jeffrey, so Jeffrey heads back to Sombrero Island, and the guy is not there. He's like, fuck. Oops. I think he might have died. Sorry, everybody. But so he gets court-martialed. He gets dissed and dismissed from the Royal Navy That is the official term for it. So Lake's out of there. Nobody knows whatever became of Robert Jeffrey until 3 years later, somebody who knew of the story or knew who Robert Jeffrey was happens upon Robert Jeffrey. He's in Massachusetts. He's working as a blacksmith in Massachusetts. 3 years later, in 1809, it turned out that an American ship had happened by not long after he was marooned, and then he heads to the U.S. and then eventually back to England. He eventually returns to England and actually received compensation for his marooning, his unfair marooning. The Crown saw it was an unfair marooning. And now, for the most famous marooning of all, it's Alexander Selkirk, the inspiration for Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, they say. Alexander Selkirk was a Scottish privateer born 1676 in Lower Largo in Fife, Scotland. Not a lot is known about his youth other than he got into a lot of trouble and was, quote, quarrelsome and unruly, and he was wont to take to the sea when he was getting in too much trouble on land. When the block was hot, he would just take to sea. It just sounds like he was a pirate all along. You know, all of his problems there. The problem is you're raising a fucking pirate. You have a young pirate in training. Of course, this kid's trouble. You know, he's a pirate who's yet to take to the sea. Of course, he's gonna be trouble. That would be a really good Jenny Jones show, by the way. Like my teen's becoming a pirate. Send him to boot camp, Jenny. My teen is swashbuckling. That would have been a great Jenny Jones. If only the age of pirates and the age of Jenny Jones had been the same age. We could have got, Jenny, you got to do something about my pirate son. I need a guy in army fatigues to come and shout in his face. He was just a pirate from day one. He got in some trouble once. He had to face a church council called the Kirk Session for quote indecent conduct in church. No specifics. I wish we had specifics what his indecent conduct in church was. But he quote did not appear being gone to sea. Of course he was, of course he was. And he also got in some trouble for fighting his brothers at a point. He was just born to be a pirate. I mean, just born for it. It's like you hear about Jerry Rice, the great wide receiver. He would help his dad. His dad laid brick, and he would stand there, and his dad would toss bricks to him, and he would sit there and catch the bricks. And you're like, oh my God, this is like an X-Men origin story for a wide receiver. That's how Alexander Selkirk just sounds like. Yeah, that's a pirate's childhood. And as a young man, he turns pro. He starts buccaneering. In 1703, he joins the expedition of the famous privateer and explorer William Dampier to the South Pacific. He's on the ship, the Cinque Ports, serving as sailing master under Captain Thomas Stradling. This is during the years of the War of the Spanish Succession, when the British reached out to pirates and were like, hey guys, I know we've been at odds for some time, what with us being the government and you guys being pirates, but now we're in a war with France and Spain. So if y'all could turn your pirate activities toward France and Spain, we'd really appreciate that. They basically deputized the pirates. They said, go kick their asses, So Dampier gets his fleet, and they sail from Kinsale, Ireland, September 11th, 1703. In May 1704, after a rough start to the expedition, they had a bunch of shit went wrong right away. They engaged a French vessel, but it got away and then was able to warn the Spanish of their presence in the area, which really fucks your shit up if you're a pirate ship trying to run up on people without them knowing. Then they were going to raid a gold mining town in Panama, but when they got ambushed when they got off their ship. Then there was a bad storm at a point, and Stradling decides to split from Dampier. He's like, "Fuck this! I'm going this way." He takes the Cinque Ports to an island known to the Spanish as Masa Tierra, located in the Juan Fernandez archipelago. You might remember this archipelago from our wager episode, but it's 400 some miles off the coast of Chile. They anchor there to restock fresh water and supplies. And while there, our guy Alexander Selkirk, he can't help but notice the ship looks like a big old pile of dog shit. He's like, "Oh my God, you guys! I don't think this ship is seaworthy." He starts expressing these concerns to people, and then probably, really, almost certainly, just trying to illustrate his point, he said something to the effect of like, "I would rather just hang out on this island than sail in this hunk of shit." Stradling's like, "Deal." Selkirk's like, No, I wasn't. I was just trying to illustrate a point." And Stradling's like, too late. You said it. Your ass is marooned. No takesies, backsies. Marooned. They give Selkirk a knife, a hatchet, a musket, a Bible, some bedding, and some clothes, and then take off. Selkirk is left to regret talking shit, even though he was completely right, as we'll see in a minute. He's presumably yelling at the ship as it leaves. He's like, "Guys, I was joking. Guys, it was a joke, guys." But of course, Stradling was a hard ass. He wouldn't let him back on. This turns out to be a good thing. As it turns out, unbeknownst to Selkirk at the time, of course, he was absolutely right about the seaworthiness of the Cinque Ports. It founders off the coast of current-day Colombia. Stradling and 6 or 7 others survived the sinking, but they're quickly captured by the Spanish, sent to Lima and imprisoned. Stradling attempts an escape in a canoe at one point, but he's recaptured and punished. They threaten to send all of them to the mines, but they apparently never follow through on that threat. And the whole gang ends up getting sent back to England after 4 years of harsh imprisonment. Back on the island, Selkirk is understandably down bad at first. He has no idea that he most likely saved his own life with his shit talking about the Cinque Ports. He just thinks he's talked himself into an early grave. He's filled with remorse. At first, he just stays on the beach being miserable, eating spiny lobsters, sleeping out there, pretty much spending all of his time scanning the horizon for ships, of course, which there are none. Eventually, Selkirk is driven from his new home on the beach by what else? That's right, the sounds of sea lion sex. That's right, listener, sea lion sex. The sea lions, it happened to be sea lion mating season, so every night hordes of loud ass, horny ass sea lions, horny as the day is long, they'd descend on the beach and just get to business. It was their smush room, if you will, for y'all Jersey Shore fans out there. It was their smush room. You remember that, where the Jersey Shore kids would go to smush? That was Masa Tierra for the sea lions. They were getting busy out there. They were getting after it, doing it well. So the sounds of sea lion love drive Selkirk inland. That turns out to be a great move for him. Once he moves a little inland, he starts thriving, really turns things around. There's more food inland, for one thing. There are feral goats. Some sailors had left goats on this island at one point in time, and now there are feral goats all over the place. That becomes very important for Selkirk. He would get meat and milk from these goats. He ate leaves of the indigenous cabbage tree and used dried skynus fruits, aka pink peppercorns, as seasoning. The problem when he moves inland is the rats. There's suddenly rats all over the place. He can't sleep. The rats attack him in the night. And then that problem kind of solves itself when he finds a crew of feral cats. He moves in near the cats. He feeds them a little bit, probably, I guess. And then suddenly he has 24-hour rat security courtesy of his new best friends, the feral cats. Selkirk builds 2 huts out of pepper trees, one for cooking and one for sleeping, fashions a knife out of old barrel hoops that had been left on the island. At first he's hunting with the musket, but once the ammo runs out, he has to physically chase down the goats with his knife. Do it that way. Much harder. In fact, one time he was badly injured after falling off a cliff, unable to move for an entire day, and it would have been worse. He likely would have broken his back, but the goat he was chasing had tumbled off the cliff ahead of him, so he had landed on the goat. The goat had broken Alexander Selkirk's fall. Selkirk made new clothes out of goat skin when his old clothes wore out, using a nail as a needle and putting to good use lessons he learned from his father, who was a tanner. And then to try to stave off the old insanity, Selkirk would sing psalms from the Bible. 2 ships actually came and anchored at the island when Selkirk was there, but both were Spanish, so they would have, at best imprisoned him if they had found him. So he is obliged to hide. People finally come and he has to hide from them. Oh, cruel irony. One of the times he's actually spotted by some Spaniards and they try to chase him down. But then he gets away from him. He climbs a tree, and then those guys, they're looking all around for him. They can't find him. Some of the guys even take a piss on this one tree, and they never look up. That's where Selkirk was. He was hiding in that tree they were pissing on. Pretty soon after that, though, they give up and leave the island. On February 2nd, 1709, Selkirk is rescued at long last. A privateering ship piloted by our old pal William Dampier called the Duke and its companion vessel, the Duchess, anchor at Mas de Tierra. It said Selkirk is almost incoherent with joy. Woodes Rogers, the Duke's captain and the leader of the expedition, makes Selkirk the second mate of the Duke. This after Selkirk had helped. You have this funny moment where the ship arrives, the Duke, and they're saving Selkirk. But meanwhile, the Duke's whole crew is they're malnourished. A lot of them have scurvy. So first, Selkirk goes and hunts, kills 3 goats for them and feeds them and treats their scurvy with the fat of the land that he's discovered. He nurses the crews back to health before they leave, and everyone is, as you can imagine, blown away by how well Selkirk is doing. I mean, he's killing it out here. He's doing great. Captain Rogers remarked, "One may see that solitude and retirement from the world is not such an insufferable state of life as most men imagine, especially when people are fairly called or thrown into it unavoidably, as this man was." Which I don't know if Selkirk would agree that he was fairly called into it or unavoidably thrown into it. I think he might say that it was pretty avoidable. Even it worked out, but it was avoidable. It probably didn't have to maroon him based on his hypothetical. Selkirk then, it says on the Wikipedia, he returned to privateering with a vengeance. He gets back together with his privateer pals, and what are they going to do other than privateer? They kind of these guys on the Duke, they kind of just slowly pirate their way back to England. Selkirk briefly captains a ship. He leads a boat of guys up a river in present-day Ecuador to steal a bunch of gold and jewels from some Spanish ladies who had hidden them in their clothes. Just pirate adventures all the way back. Then on October 1st, 1711, Selkirk arrives back in England after an absence of 8 years. 8 years after that, then, Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe is published, and a lot of people are quick to make the connection. They say, oh, that sounds like the Alexander Selkirk story. Defoe never said it was inspired by Selkirk, but people point out that Robinson Crusoe takes place not in the mid-latitudes of the South Pacific, but in the Caribbean. And Crusoe, like Selkirk, he wore goatskin clothes. So people are thinking, well, if he's not Selkirk, if it's in the Caribbean, why the hell would he wear goatskin clothes? It's so hot down there. Goatskin clothes wouldn't be comfortable at all. So they think it's Selkirk. But now most everyone believes the character came from a combination of real life stories. As for Selkirk, he became a celebrity in England for a while. He's flush with cash from his pirate adventures on the Duke. His cut of the plunder was £800, which is around 140,000 pounds in today's money. So he's doing good. He marries a young woman in his own hometown of Lower Largo, as well as a widowed innkeeper in Plymouth. Gets in some trouble for assaulting a shipwright in Bristol, and may have been jailed for a couple years over that. But eventually things more or less go back to normal for Selkirk, though he would sometimes express a longing for the simple life back on Massa Tierra. He once said after his return, quote, "I am now worth £800, but shall never be as happy as when I was not worth a farthing." Selkirk dies in 1721 while serving as an officer aboard an anti-piracy ship. I know he flipped. It's disappointing. He had joined the Royal Navy at some point. Flipped. He had gone corporate. He was on this ship patrolling the waters off the west coast of Africa. And basically, the men would disembark from the ship, get off the ship, go into the forest to cut down trees, and just get annihilated by mosquitoes. When they came back, they were just giant walking mosquito bites, more yellow fever than man. There was also typhoid in the mix, they think. So basically everyone's just dying. The whole ship is dying, and Selkirk is one of those. He gets swept up. He dies. He is buried at sea in 1721. The Chilean government actually honored Selkirk by naming one of the Juan Fernandez Islands after him. But funny enough, the Alexander Selkirk Island is an island that he never actually saw in all likelihood, and the one Selkirk was actually on is named Robinson Crusoe Island. So the fake guy gets the real island, and the real guy gets the island he never even saw. Didn't even kill any feral goats on that island. Means nothing to him. That's bureaucracy for you. But anyway, that's our episode number 102. So You've Been Marooned, an episode about marooning. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. I have a couple stand-up dates for y'all. August 22nd, Fort Worth, I'm going to be on Luis Juarez's show in the Red Room, Fort Worth Hyenas. It's going to be a good one. Luis is a great dude and a hilarious comic. You might have seen him on Netflix's Funny AF. Should be a lot of fun. Then 1 week after that, August 29th, I'm going to be on the Dumb Zone Comedy Night at Dallas Comedy Club in Deep Ellum. Both shows should be a blast. Go see a live comedy show. It's a good time. Hey, here's a crazy thing I learned this week. I've been reading this book called Deadly Dallas, a history of unfortunate incidents and grisly fatalities. And man, it is what it sounds like. It's those things by the barrelful. There's so many horrible accidents to read about in Dallas's history. Everything was awful in the 19th century, it seemed like. 19th, early 20th century, terrible. It seemed like a nightmare of an existence in so many ways. Oil lamps would just explode on you. After the invention of dynamite was just everywhere. You could just buy dynamite at the hardware store. Everyone had dynamite. It was like a goddamn Warner Brothers cartoon all over America. Just dynamite lying everywhere. So people would explode. People would just explode. People's lamps would explode. The oil lamps. If the wick burned too far down, they would explode. If you there were all these little things you had to know about the oil lamp upkeep, just to not die a horrible fiery death. Just seems like a really bad time. Construction equipment was all powered. It was all steam power, and so that everything had boilers, and the boilers would explode. I read in this book, in 1888, Dallas was experiencing a water shortage, so city officials decided to drill down in City Park. They drill an artesian well in City Park. So they start drilling. They get down 300 feet and then they hit hard rock. So they talk about what they're going to do. They decide, after much discussion, they carefully lower 2 10-gallon glass bottles of nitroglycerin into the shaft to break up the blockage, but the nitroglycerin doesn't explode. Then they continue trying to get this nitroglycerin to explode for 2 weeks straight. The nitroglycerin will not explode. So after 2 weeks, they're like, I guess let's take it to the house. They pull out their pipes, they fill in the hole. So to this day, under Old City Park here in Dallas, there are 2 10-gallon, there's 20 gallons of nitroglycerin under Old City Park. How crazy is that shit? So if you are planning on outing at Old City Park, just fucking watch your step. I mean, I don't know science well enough to know like how dangerous that is or whatever. Maybe it's no big deal, but it seems like a lot of nitroglycerin to have under a park in a large city. But what do I know? That's it for our episode. Thank y'all for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Until next time, we love each and every one of you. Au revoir.
Got digging through the past. Crazy tales, they uncover facts. History stranger than you think. They'll also talk about wieners in a blink. They'll talk about wieners in a blink. Oddball history.